say yes? I hereby call this meeting to order for the purpose of a special meeting for the board to consider accepting the request from the PEA to open negotiations for the 2025-2026 school year, award bids, and approve donation requests. I will turn the time over to Brenda. Well, oh wait, yeah. It says Brenda Miners, Sue Pettit, and Jonathan Balls to review the request from the PEA to open negotiations for the 25-26.
Sure, I'll just speak.
Okay.
Good afternoon, board members. Appreciate your time this afternoon. Again, we've received the letter that's in your packet from our Pocatello Education Association President, Ms. Marianne McGrory, asking to start the formal process of negotiations. And so you'll see the letter there, as well as the response from our district, Ms. McGrory, in front of you. This is the annual request to begin the negotiation process.
Okay,
That's what it is.
I'm just trying to catch up.
You're good. You're great.
And then also, do you want to just go right ahead and just do the?
Oh, I guess you're right. There's the action item is
it's-
afterwards. Okay.
The way it's written, the action items are at the end.
Yep, which is
But
probably
we
good.
can
Okay. Okay.
do that.
Can I just ask, so the request that Marianne has made for all these documents, is that, these are standard things you asked for?
Cool.
Oh.
Yep. Those are standard things, and they have been delivered.
Oh, great.
So.
So I'll just say procedurally that we will wait to convene a special meeting for action because we can't take any action before we have public comment.
Okay.
So we'll just
Oh,
review and then,
So we'll just review the bid awards for the fire alarm and the track.
Yes, yep. First one is for the fire alarm. Again, we need to make a correction that we actually reported at last board meeting for the fire alarm that we did not have any qualified and responsible bidders, but that was in error. We actually did have one, and we have verified that their bid was responsible, meaning all of our items, required items, were there. And it was delivered on time. It was inadvertently not included in that bid opening and wasn't found, unfortunately, until after last board meeting. And so you'll see it there, 3D Fire out of Idle Falls. They will be able to do everything from the fire alarm system side and then subcontract out the electrical. So that will be all underneath their contract. And so the motion there is kind of that we need to undo what that you did before, that basically have the previous award to State Fire, Idaho, and Saunderson Electric to be null and void, and award the Franklin alarm replacement to 3D Fire in the amount of $295,600. So
Quite a difference.
There is. That was, yep. We had due thoughts, and I
On here,
I talked with the CEO or the manager there of 3D Fire and made sure he was there. But this is the right thing to do there, because that would have been what was originally presented there. And just by way of information, we have put in places procedures and in place to double check ourselves to make sure that this does not happen again. So, okay. Now for this next one is for the track replacement. This is what the board had asked to kind of have a little bit more time. We've included a couple documents there. One is kind of a recap, if you will, of the bids that we have formally put out to the general contractors and subcontractors. Again, in alphabetical order, there is the bid description. I tried to give a little where the location was at. For example, Asphalt Syringa is getting a new parking lot there. Again, list the contractor as well as our budget estimates and the actual bid amount and the differences there. I'll note just to highlight, there's two that are asterisks that, again, that you would, subject to board approval, which are taken for action later in this meeting. There's still 2 more that are out. You'll see I wrote the bid opening dates for the restrooms at Hawthorne and the temporary parking lot at Highland, and those bid dates, and that would be before you at the May normal board meeting.
So the
So-
temporary parking lot, are they gonna pave that?
So no, not yet. We basically, we need to expand that temporary parking lot because the Bateman Hall needs more laydown yard. So they're gonna take the several rows, close to almost 200 spots on the east side of that south parking lot.
Is that gonna affect when they go down to the stadium?
Excellent thought, and no, because we will create a walkway. There'll basically be 2 laydown yards and fences. There'll be signs, but yeah, that was one of the first things that we talked about, was how to get to the stadium. We also, the band storage, they have a van in that far corner, and so they'll be able to come and empty that and their storage there. So, and they're very conscientious. They know they're taking up of our parking lot, which is so precious, but yet with, to get supplies and to have laydown yards, there will be some trailers, because that's just efficiencies for some of these subcontractors, particularly the plumbing, electrical, the major subcontractors. They'll bring in trailers and they'll need a space for them to put there. So the temporary parking lot will just be extending that one. Once we're working on the process to identify an architect that can help draw that up. Once we have that decision from the city on Bench Road, that'll all be put in. It'll be a kind of a larger project that will, the board will be involved in as well.
So you're you're planning to have an architect design the final product
Absolutely.
so that when you put that temporary parking lot in, it fits with that?
The base, we wanted to have it flexible, so the base, our goal is that we don't have to redo the base of that. But whether it needs to, I know the city will require some greenery, kind of like Century, right in the middle, kind of like the.
Pokey.
And Pokey, correct.
Right.
And so we're just trying to keep it flexible there, so that's why we're not paving it for cost, and then that way, when it does get designed and approved through the city, and it is functional the way that we want that to function there for Highland, that we can, as least cost as possible to put it in place.
So is it on for action next board meeting to make that change to the SIP committee plans to not pave anything
So
at Highland?
the SIP was just the parking lot. So
And the front entrance. It was the front entrance and that parking, let me see, I have it here.
okay, and I guess in my mind it would be in phases. And so this because we have to clear the brush, we have to get rid of all the excess dirt there. We'd have to do that anyway. So this is essentially the first phase. It just allows us to have enough parking there for basically next school year. And
So-
then,
But that is a change from what was approved in December I read back on the agenda.
Again, I didn't think it was a change. It was just, there's multiple phases to the project. We need to do this one phase, possibly even earlier than we kind of wanted to, because of the laydown yard and Bateman Hall taking some of the parking lot.
Extending it, you mean that part of it? The extension of
Correct,
it?
extension
Right,
there.
'cause
So
I guess,
I'll do whatever, the board, if it needs to come up for action there. I wasn't planning on it just because, again, I think it's still within the scope there, but it's your decision.
yep. That was just what I read on the agenda. I wasn't here at that meeting. That was the only time it was discussed. So that was on the meeting for paving a portion of it for them to be able to use next school year, but not the extension due to Bateman Hall needing, that part I understand that is an
Yeah.
addition for tonight,
Yeah.
for today. I
Sure.
know that, but I'm talking about the first part that was the plan to pave. I don't I don't remember.
And we might have, we talked about paving, but then again, I'm going through my mind, it's, okay, when were we thinking about, getting Bench Road? And that changed a little bit there, that we have some opportunities here.
So it's still allocated? That's
Absolutely,
not
still
changed.
allocated. And part of it is, how many things can we juggle on this one site, at Highland? And also I wanted to make sure, because the bids hadn't come back yet in December, right? We wanted to make sure, so I don't know if I definitely didn't want to pave it all just because I wanted to make sure we had enough money, to do what we needed with the actual building that would,
Right, I mean,
be there for the 60 years coming.
right, the design had to be first, which.
Correct.
We understand that.
Yeah.
So just as long as we know that and that we let them know that,
Yes.
and as long as we're taking into consideration the safety.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that gives us,
I think that they should probably start keeping track of how many wrecks are there and everything, because I don't know that we really have that documented right now. It's lots of pictures, lots of experiences, but I don't know that that's really documented as an actual safety concern.
yeah, but I unfortunately, you're talking about almost every high school, that those are, having teenage drivers in close proximity to each other definitely has its challenges there.
Right, but
Yeah.
gravel with no lines and no lanes is just an entirely.
Sure, it is temporary, obviously not permanent. I can tell you, we are already, Brian has a design there for some lighting, that at least, that can be up, by the fall, at least provide some lighting there.
Yeah,
And
in the
then,
school
but still
day.
be flexible with what we want to do in front.
Yeah, in the school day, I don't know that the lighting is even an issue.
No,
It's
of course
not
not.
really the safety that I'm
Correct, just in the
talking
evening, yeah.
about. Yeah, I guess for evening games or whatever happens there in the evening, that would be helpful.
Correct. In the long term, it definitely will be there.
What about a permanent crosswalk across there? Has that been a problem for the kids, or?
Yeah,
They just kind of shotgun across there wherever they want?
Yeah, they do, because I went there for a school visit.
it is, you're correct.
It's a problem.
And that's, as soon as we own that, and that is part of the plan, that, even before, we have a plan on what we're doing, we will paint crosswalks on there and, try to do all that we can is to keep, those coming across that bench road, safely from the parking lot into the school.
Can we put up one of those flashing lights? They can push a button and.
Well, we could,
Well,
we could look at purchasing ourselves, it's,
Well, it would
Or-
be that they need to be stopped too. That it's not time to walk, because all the kids, that's the only entrance
correct,
in.
sure.
as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's a
they have
lot
to
of,
be told when to stop and when to go, or else
yeah.
it's,
And I know the Highland administration, they definitely are watching that close, but yeah, we'll put the things in place there, especially, hopefully that we will eventually own that piece and,
But this is what's been going on all year anyway, right?
oh, correct,
it's been a
correct, yeah.
problem.
It's,
problem all year.
yeah, sure, it's been a challenge for sure. And
But
so,
nothing's been tracked and nothing's been brought to us.
no, and I
way.
don't think a car crash would come to the
No,
board.
a lot of them. It's not just.
Sure.
it's
No, I-
just the increase, the amount of increase.
Yeah, like I say, that's definitely a challenge every high school.
Yeah.
And then I was asked to kind of put together just kind of a timeline of kind of when with this was talked about. Some of it was just in the meeting minutes of the board meeting as well. But just kind of wanted to, show that at least we'd tried to, be open as we could about this track at the middle school at Franklin. So again, I guess my ask of you is essentially, is there anything that you need from us to help to make a decision? Can I mention maybe the numbers? I've got a little bit. So again, the financial piece that's in front of you there, again, you have the, did we put the original bid in there?
Yes.
Okay, right there, yep, sorry, just need to flip it back. So you have the original bid there to replace the 6 lane track, a new base, and install the sod sprinkler system and the outer 3 lanes there for $298,556. I did get with Mike with M&S Development and just say, okay, Mike, give me a tentative or a more firm number on what it would cost to replace that as a full 6. And he said it would be an additional $175,000 to $180,000. I'm going, for you, I would like to bump that to $200,000 in your mind for a decision, just, just to make sure he's got some contingencies in there if they run into some slag or anything like that. But the decision there financially in front of you is the $175,000 to $200,000 additional to replace all 6 lanes. And so that is a fairly firm number. He went back out to his sub-vendors and say, okay, in the event there was a change order, this is.
And so this is just for the track, not to do anything to the center
That is correct.
as a soccer field?
So the original bid, that 298 would, add sod and add sprinklers, but that's part of the savings is obviously we're trading the sod for additional asphalt and rubberization.
And the one in yellow would also not do anything to make it a soccer field either.
It does add sod. But
It
that's-
adds
that's-
sod.
That's it.
Yeah.
Right,
Sprinklers
but
and sod.
which wouldn't be necessary for a soccer field. It's already okay to be used as a soccer field. As
If,
letters,
as I understand, it's just not quite wide enough.
yeah. Anyway,
So-
that's not really what we're talking
Okay.
about. So.
The other
Okay.
question I had
Yes.
is, I know this has been part of a 5-year plan. Is there anything that makes this an imminent, something we need to do today? I mean, I've talked to some soccer folks, because I think a comment was made at our board meeting, work session, can't remember now, that they said, that they wouldn't use it because it wasn't the right size. And I was told they would absolutely would use it. It may not be for a regulation game, but they would use it for practice. They could use it, that it wasn't a completely off the table to still use it. And then again, going back to the question, what is the driving need to do this right this second? Because I also felt like, have we maybe ignored, we've got these outside groups that are dedicated to using that track, and I know our priority is, we've got to put school needs first, but are we maybe rushing a decision that perhaps some of these outside groups, because of their desire to have a track in this community, is there some fundraising that they could do privately to help offset some of that? I mean, the more I've read, I think this was a decision that was inherited by all of us, and that there is a real need for that, to eliminate a more public track. I don't know. I'm
So-
really on the fence to
And that-
see and
so
understand
if I-
why it's something that we need to decide
Absolutely.
today.
So if I could, I guess, summarize a couple of your key points and then
Please.
okay, so the imminent part is there is definitely some doop-de-doos, in that track, and it does need to be replaced.
And what is the material today? Is it a concrete or asphalt
So
track?
it's asphalt, and then there's some.
There is a
There is a rubber,
rubberized-
but it's
It's
almost
exactly
all
if
gone.
you had a track at the high school, it's just the
Okay.
last 3
Okay.
lanes. Exactly. The markings and everything. And, I did read the AD's comments, and I, fully transparently, I encourage them to, speak their voice.
Sure.
A couple of things that does concern me is Franklin feeling like they can hold all the meets there. If they do, then I know that we'd have a big outcry of our parents, where do they practice? Because if I have 2 schools utilizing the track, there's no way for them to practice.
It says in the notes, it would only displace them 1 day a week. From Franklin's AD.
Correct, because there's 5 days, but it also said in the notes they don't practice on Monday. But a meet takes 2 days. So 2 days for their meet and 2
Yeah,
days
that's
for
just
two
what-
other
That's
schools.
just what it said in her.
Correct, and I'm reading kind of what you are, because
Yeah, I know
I'm not
what they-
speaking for her. I just worry,
So we'd encourage them to use at least the high school for one of those meets, right? I mean,
which would defeat the purpose of what they're fighting for. So that's why I was
Well-
worried about what they were saying. Does that make sense? And the other thing, you know, that a big advocate of promoting at Franklin is, I know that Irving and Alameda will be here next week or the next board meeting saying, okay, we need this too. There's no reason why we
Right.
wouldn't.
Because it wasn't this board that made the decision to rip out the tracks. Jim is the only member of that board left. And I know it was wildly unpopular with the public, and I know it wasn't like fully supported with our board because we didn't really vote on it. I mean, we didn't really ever take a vote as far as like where that even landed. But I do know that before, when Angie was here, I do know that we didn't have the support for the Franklin one from one of our previous meetings when we discussed it, but other
For
than that-
Alameda, yeah.
yeah, I mean, we just haven't talked about it since then, and if we just had a lot of public comment back then, which I guess Ray and Megan would not have been a part of, and if, I think if the public knew, and if, I didn't hear anything from the track coaches, that's who I wanted to hear from.
I
But
think we have
heard
one
from the
speaking
athletic
tonight.
director. I heard from the, yeah, I think we have it from some of the athletic directors, but I wanted to hear from the coaches because I was hearing stuff about at the high school level. The very first year this happened, there was a lot of rain and a lot of canceled and rescheduled track meets. And it was far different than what they thought because of the high school, then all of a sudden they were actually home instead of being gone for a track meet. And then the middle schools were supposed to be having a meet and then they couldn't, so they couldn't practice. They could, I don't know, it was just.
There's
they were
definitely
having-
growing pains because we
were-
weren't used to being
Well,
together,
it was
but
bad
that,
weather, which could happen every year.
Right.
It was really just the bad weather.
that first year we had to share the track with Alameda the whole season because of the renovation
Yeah,
At
I'm
Irving.
talking about.
at Alameda.
Yeah, I was talking about at Highland, I don't remember who it was that said that how many days of school their track kids had to miss because they had to redo.
That's when
schedules.
we were coexisting up there. So Alameda and Highland coexisted for a season while they're waiting for their practice track to get finished because it was
That
not finished in time.
probably part of it, but I think the other part was the weather. Yeah. Anyway, I know there's more to it than this that I don't know. I'm trying to remember what was said a couple of years ago. And I know, yeah, I just know that there was a lot said a couple of years ago, but we don't really have that input right now.
Mr. Balls, would you mind answering the second part of Ms. Clark's question?
Yep, I knew, remind me, please, what?
Oh, it was in regard to, how soon does this need to happen?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Is it critical to do it now, or what's the timeline for putting it off? You mentioned a whoop-de-doo, which would be,
Doop-de-doo.
Doop-de-doo.
It's on
Well,
the
I think it-
backside of
Yeah, it's on the backside. It was a hump, so I called it whoop-de, rather than
Yeah,
a
I think
doop-de.
it's better
We can't
for
hold meets
lots
there, but we
Correct.
can hold practice
Correct, on the
currently.
internet
But it
couple
is getting more dangerous, and that's what we're worried about.
So in the short timeline, I mean, we have to know by May if it's gonna get done before school, because they won't start until there. Just even time value of money, the way things are going, it's always cheaper right now than it will be next year. So again, I don't know if you were talking of that scenario. The other one is, again, there's the financial, as you know, there's all those sorts of different facets of the reasons why. If you go back to financially, let's say, as Ms. Wilkes mentioned, okay, what is Irving or what is Alameda gonna say? Then, okay, there's some more dollars, and obviously the
only issue I have with that one, and someone else brought it up, is, now, is it Hawthorne that they're right next door to the high school, so if there's always gonna be that inequity.
There will be.
There's
That is
always,
correct.
it's never gonna be fair. And so,
It
Yeah.
is a high school 6-lane track that they.
Right, but they
versus-
now
actually
have
8, yeah.
access.
Or
Yep.
8 lanes?
Right.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's
Yeah.
full 8.
And I guess that's another question for the more athletically minded. I am not.
He's the
But
runner.
the 6-lane versus 8-lane, I heard that talked about. I even asked Surrey on my way over. You know, they said
So-
that high school or middle school could not use Franklin for their meets because it would only be 6 unless it was made.
So truly and
what's the
typically,
legitimacy of that?
a track to hold a meet needs 8 lanes. So our high schools, when Pocatello High School was at Irving, could never hold a meet because it was only 6 lanes. So you want an 8-lane track just because of time frame and running your fastest runners together. It allows you to run 4 and 4. Does that make sense?
Right, but-
Does the middle school need it?
That's what I was
No.
going to ask, because a couple of the ADs were
Right.
saying, well, a middle school would never go over there if it was, even if it was only 6.
No, only
So-
for regional and city. But for the regular track meets, I thought that they said yes. that
At
they
any
could.
time, they could use that, because there's really no really regulations at the
Okay.
middle school, but they've gotten used to using the high schools
Sure.
and utilizing those.
Yeah, and that's, that, like I said, there's no athletic performance difference from 6 to 8. It's just
Okay.
number of athletes, especially.
If you have
Mid-
some
middle
top
school
runners,
that-
you get 4 of your top runners compared to 3 running together.
Sure,
Correct,
okay.
correct.
That's what I
And
just,
middle school,
Competition's better with 8.
middle schools, if you've ever seen one, when how many heats of the 100 are there? Probably 25.
5,000.
Yeah, 25 heats of the 100,
yeah.
because everybody
2
likes
hours.
those short distance.
Like
Yep.
less heats, that would take less time.
Correct, correct.
In a
Correct, yes.
dual meet, we let them all run. When we do actually all city, we limit the heat, because we'd be there all night.
Yeah. Did that help kind of answer
It
your question?
did.
Elizabeth?
I guess, given the outcry that we had a year ago, given that there's this window of opportunity, if there was nothing that, and I don't know, are we voting on this tonight? I was looking at the action.
Yes.
That's,
look
that's,
like it.
it's up for action,
It is.
as the same as it, it was just after the public
We
comment.
tabled it last.
No, I understand that, but it just, I don't see it.
It's on the bid awards.
It's the same as all the bid awards.
Actually,
Oh,
So if you go to the
I just-
action item and you look at award bids, it would be to declare the one null and void
Okay.
and accept the new bid,
Oh, I
and then to
Okay.
accept the bid as was, but add a change order.
Okay.
So that's how the motion would have to be read.
With a change order.
So I don't know if you want my discussion now, but I'm leaning towards waiting, but, because I feel like there's interest in the community to help save it, and what could that interest look like with given, an opportunity? Because I think there's enough of a community interest in maintaining an accessible, great parking, it's central, I don't know.
Okay.
Because
Yeah,
I'm
and
not
that's-
hearing that there's an imminent, we have to do this today, other than, but everything's going to go up in cost.
Sure.
I mean, I
sure.
know
And I
that's,
think that's why we
you know.
had been waiting. Like,
And they've-
we were trying to wait.
And Franklin, staff, PE teachers, track coaches, they know, and even I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure the running club definitely knows where those spots are, and you can't run in those lanes or jump over it, or.
and I guess you can't
And it's been-
spot fix the
No,
lane.
we tried.
I mean, it's been like that for, I don't
Just cut it
remember
out.
how many years, at least 5. but
It
probably
has been
longer
there a
than
while, I
5.
don't know either, but it has
Yeah,
been.
But more than 5, because I just know only 5.
I guess the other question is, what is our liability to? If
And
some-
that's an
I mean, a
excellent
community
question.
member gets hurt on that. Am I asking?
Again, that's where
A loaded question.
we need to get with the
When there
running
are
club and have
holes.
some insurance, yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there are always holes in the soccer field, so it's kind of the same
And that's,
idea
that's correct, it's,
as that.
you assume the liability when you come into a parking lot or,
when they,
type of thing.
when they're allowed to be there, I guess.
yeah.
The liability is.
So to piggyback on Heather's question,
Mhm.
if this was put off a year,
Mhm.
and, it obviously would not happen before track season next year if we put it off a year.
Correct, that's correct.
So would Franklin Middle School be in the same boat they are in now, or do you think the way that the lanes are having issues, it would give them even less running space? Do you know? Or they would just be.
I know
I
it's
think-
dangerous, and that I've been telling Jonathan that the last couple of years.
So-
So
Sure,
it
sure.
makes me nervous,
I-
just knowing that.
I don't,
But I know they've been using
Yeah.
in certain areas, the inner lanes, in certain areas, the outer lanes. So it fluctuates as
Like
you
a
go around.
bob
the
and
track.
weave around
Thank
I
you.
don't know if it's, Brian, is it,
The west side of the track, where the drainage pipes run to the culvert, and where all the trees are on that side, the tree roots and culverts have destroyed the asphalt base underneath the roadway. It is really, really bad. There are spots where it varies by as much as 8 inches.
so if it, but the
And they get faster.
one year timeline it theoretically will get a little bit worse, but will it impact another lane? That's,
It will, especially with the tree roots, as it's getting
Yeah.
progressively worse, and that time frame is getting accelerated as it deteriorates.
yeah. So there might be some, I don't know if it's
So
gonna be a
sa-
full lane, but as you know,
But
tree roots.
safety-wise, it becomes a greater risk every time we wait.
That is correct, that's correct. If it was a 5-year wait, I'd say, no, it'll,
We discussed that a lot in the SIP committee meeting.
Correct.
Like, can we wait another year? And we just felt like we couldn't.
Let's see. Oh, yes, I was gonna ask you, well, for one thing, we were revisiting the SIP plans next meeting, so I'm a little bit confused why this is kind of pulled out as a separate issue, when really the whole SIP committee goals are next meeting, but, because we were under bid in several areas, and it would more than cover this 175 to
That's correct.
200.
And
It
that's,
would more than cover it.
so
To
the,
me, we're still within budget. As far as the budget goes,
That's
we're
correct.
still within budget.
that is correct. And that's that document I said, again, when you tabled it, I don't know if we set a timeline, as we just knew that we needed it. We knew we had this letter from the PA, we were meeting together. Well, okay, let's talk about, what you need to make a decision regarding the Franklin track. This, regarding SIP, normally it's not a revisit for action, it's more of this, an update. But then I'll also share some of those, we finalized some of the requests from the directors and requests from the schools. And it basically get a.
Wanted to add something.
Correct, but typically, the revisit is not for action. It could be if something, changes drastically, but that was at least the
But you feel
plan.
comfortable with the money if we were to go ahead and make the decision tonight to go ahead and move forward with that change order, that we could make sure that we are still within our budget?
So,
The thing I'm curious is you don't have the restrooms and the parking
that is
lot
correct.
bids on
The,
here.
the parking lot bid, we're fairly confident will come, within the money allocated. The excellent point, the restrooms, they will be overbid because,
But you don't have the budget in here, do we?
and I
have
don't
it?
because if I have the budget without the actual, then it skewed it.
Oh, gotcha.
It basically overstated it.
So when
But-
you say allocated, is that insurance you're talking about for the parking lot?
No, it's in SIP,
Oh.
SIP. So, we have this, it is, Ms. Judy mentioned that, again, we have money for the parking lot, and this would basically be using a portion of it, because no matter if we do it now or later, it's still the base. We still have to clear off the sagebrush and do everything of that
It'll just
nature.
remain
So-
allocated.
My question is,
Mhm.
right now, you're showing a surplus of $586,000.
Correct.
And does that take into account that these two bids, the restrooms and the temporary parking lot, you have money set aside for that, and we've got $586,000?
So we have the budget set aside from it, but we don't have I'm pretty sure the restrooms will come over. But if it's 100,000, then I still have, then we still have 486 there.
No, I'm just
Does that
saying,
make sense?
these two items in green.
Yes.
The restrooms and the parking lot.
There's
The
money
current,
set
the
aside.
current difference right now, that reflects the fact that there's money set aside for those.
That is correct.
Okay, good.
If it ever changes, it would just be if it was over budget. And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Just with these restrooms at Hawthorne, it is kind of this newer style, complete gut and remodel. We wanted to see what that number was. And so,
We can pull back on the scale, though, because they're functional and everything. It's really
and
just
that's true.
for privacy. This is really strictly for
Privacy and security, this would be
Security.
the one
Privacy
that,
and security, right.
floor to
Because
ceiling
they're all
stalls.
functional and
Mhm.
everything like that, which.
Yep, so, and yeah, that's a good we'll talk about this at the work session as well, but,
That's maybe one
possibly,
thing, we
I
don't do
guess.
floor to ceiling on the doors, but we do it in between, or, just that, I don't
Well,
know.
it is going out to bid in a certain way, so we'd have to either accept or deny that bid.
I see.
But anyway, we can talk about that maybe at a work session or the next board meeting.
But to Mr. Knopf, your question, and I think the example that Mr. Ball's provided may not be completely accurate.
Go
but
ahead.
I think it's a fair example, that if it was $100,000 increase over the bid, you'd still have $486,000.
Oh, yeah, sure. We have 586,000, and we're talking 200,000 for the track.
Yeah.
So I guess I would say is that if we're going to do the track, then we really should make a decision this year rather than put it off. given the fact that we've got humps there, given the fact that the roots are going to make things worse, and it's going to get more expensive.
Look at more.
So then the question would be, you know,
To track or not to track?
that's right. And yeah,
Track or not.
and we
I
would
mean,
like
it's
to,
up for
we would like to
action,
make that
so.
this year, and you're saying we should do it by May. So I guess the timeline is, you know, you would like to get some more input so that we can make a decision next month.
I mean, I think I have the input. I just wondered if how soon it, and so you've given me the timeline. I'm leaning toward keeping it a track. Because I think we need a track in the community. I mean,
That's not.
So what's it gonna do for us when we get a 6-lane track there, we got a 8-lane track for Hawthorne, you got Alameda and Irving, that only got a 3-lane track.
Well,
And
we can't,
we had a girl last time that said that because of the 6-lane track makes her a better runner. What's that gonna do for those kids that have to run on a 3-lane track all the time?
but I think that's been the point, is that we can't make it equal all the time, every time. And it was a decision that was made. I mean, I guess there's, in my mind, there are bigger issues at stake with this Franklin one than there had been. I don't know. I mean, those were already so far down the decision pike. I mean,
yeah, whether those decisions were good decisions or bad decisions, it's really not for us to say at this point. It's already done,
But I
and we
think-
can't really go back and redo any of
and those
that.
are decent 3-lane tracks. I mean, they're brand new.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
and they're a lot nicer than the original plan. The original plan was
Asphalt.
asphalt walking tracks. So then, you know, with the outcry, you know, they became rubberized with 3 lanes. I have all that. I was here for all that. And so because it was so unsafe, you know, with asphalt, to even run on them. So anyway, the numbers became very different than it started out as, because then by the time you rubberize them and put the paint and everything, it was just, we kind of learned from that experience. But I think when one school rises, we all rise. I just don't really see it as like, oh, you know, looking at someone else with jealousy, because everybody can use that track now in the entire community. Whereas if it's not there, nobody can use it.
And they can do the true 400 at those other tracks, right?
Yeah, they're marked just like they would be.
So it's not like they're
Correct.
any kind of a shortcut.
And I
on
think
those
you
new
have
tracks.
a track coaches speaking today, so those are good questions to ask.
They are?
Well, we won't be asking.
We don't, yeah, don't
Oh,
ask
Yeah,
sorry.
public
it's
input.
just
No, we're not asking any.
public
good.
comment,
You're good.
not discussion.
No, not discussing.
See, I get in trouble.
And you can't make that a 6-lane track and still have it be a soccer field, right?
It wouldn't be then you'd have that equity difference again. So the width that they do want them does not fit within a track lane.
The width that a soccer field
So
would
if you
need to
have
be,
that-
but there is no soccer at middle school. So we're talking about what's beneficial for middle school kids at this point.
So again, I go back to the original question is, okay, what does the board need from us to to make that decision? Or if, and so if there's not anything,
No, I
Or
guess I just
any
want
other-
to hear the public comment before
sure,
Yeah. then you'll have
negotiating here.
Yeah.
Another opportunity for discussion
yeah.
with the action item.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, but
Right.
it is up for action today. So
Correct.
we will do that.
Okay.
So the last thing,
Yeah, do you,
so I brought to you, Advantage wanted to buy scoreboards for all the middle schools, and so they did do that. So they purchased scoreboards, brand new scoreboards for every one of the middle schools, Daktronics, has the school names and so forth on it. So we took down the old scoreboards, and so we would like to donate to neighboring schools. Aberdeen's reached out that they'd like a couple. Chauvin Elementary and so forth has reached out and they'd like a couple. I'd like to donate those scoreboards to those schools if we have your approval.
and so that's, and my portion of it again is just the Idaho code that, you know, we have surplus property, you know, what can we do with that? And again, it does allow taxpayer entities to donate, especially those that are under $5,000. These scoreboards, we tried to estimate 15 plus.
I bought the one at Irving, so that, yeah.
Oh, you,
At least 50.
15 to 20 is what we were thinking. So we think the depreciated value there that would be less, and we'd be within the Idaho code to be able to donate that to the, neighboring school districts that need a.
And I
need
did
one.
reach out to all of District 5 to see if there was a need, and that's who reached out back, was Aberdeen and Chauvin.
Great.
So
Okay.
that's a.
And hopefully they work still.
And
They did work.
They did
Oh,
work,
good.
yep. They'll get
Good.
They all
controllers.
work.
Their controllers are in
Good,
the
I
office.
just know there
right?
was a
Controllers
comment
for
about
Lance.
getting
Yeah.
them to work again.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
hopefully they do work well. Thank you. We will now accept public comment regarding the proposals. One request was made by Ms. Jody Diaz. So we'll have 3 minutes for.
Hi, my name is Jody Diaz. I am one of the PE teachers at Alameda and the head track coach. I have been the track coach, one of the track coaches there since 2013 when we reopened as a middle school. As you know, in 2022, our track was redone as the 3-lane practice track. I wrote a letter back then, and I saw that it's on the, that was 3 years ago. So let me say my thoughts now. At last board meeting, some of you had some questions about how Alameda's track team and track program is doing with the 3-lane track, and I just wanted to answer those. Someone asked how the numbers, if they have decreased, and they have not. We have 190 kids on our track team today. We have 573 kids enrolled at Alameda, so that's 33% of our student body is on the track team. And we have been sitting about 190 for the last 10 years. So it hasn't been affected at all. Another question that I heard is there too many people for 3 lanes? And I really thought it was going to be, but it has not affected us. I run a really organized practice, and it takes a little bit of coordination each day between me and the other coaches just to make sure that we're all on the same page with what we're doing for the day. But we have enough room. And what it usually looks like is one straightaway has hurdles, the other straightaway will be sprints. Relay exchanges are practiced mostly on the corners, and then field events are off wherever the field events spot is. And then our distance program, our distance group is usually off campus, but if they want to go on track, then we usually give them the inside lane. So it really hasn't been an issue. And I think, well, we haven't lost the city meet since 2014, and so I think the results kind of speak for themselves there. I also think using the high school tracks for our meets has been a really good experience for our kids. It's really fun. It's like a little field trip for them. And some of our best athletes, they perform at big, giant arenas and fields and all that. But there's a lot of kids out of our 190 that this is the only sport they have ever participated in and probably will ever participate in because it's a no-cut thing and there's something for everyone. And I think it's really fun for them and important for them to get to go up to the high schools and see where they might be in a few months or a few years. And it'll be the biggest stage that they ever get to perform on. And so I think that is a big thing for them and for all of us. The details of this middle school track, I don't know that anybody's thought about them enough. Just having been there, and we did used to have meets at the middle school. And they will be 4-day, we'll have to stagger meets, and meets are 2 days long each, and so that's looking like a Tuesday, Wednesday meet and a Thursday, Friday meet, where there's one day where there's nothing going on. A program that has 200 athletes versus Franklin, who also has 200 athletes, that's gonna be like at least 500 cars there with virtually no seating. And then the fiscal responsibility, what it looks like for the community, when 3 months ago we closed a school because of the cost to maintain it, and as a middle school, as a person boundaried in Washington, I think that there's gonna be outcry if we choose to spend our money this way instead of updating this, or upkeeping the school.
Well,
Feel free to
thank you.
contact me with any
Yeah.
questions or anything. You can reach me via my athletic director, Molly Johnson.
Perfect, thank you so much, I appreciate you.
Thank you.
So, so now we're going into the special meeting, right? I'll now convene a special meeting for action. The first item of business is to accept the request from the PEA to open negotiations for the 2025-2026 school year. Is there a motion?
I move that the board accept the request from the PEA to open negotiations for the 2025-2026 school year as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passed. The next item is to declare the previous action on the FMS fire alarm system as null and void and consider awarding the revised bid for the FMS fire system. Is there a motion? The fire alarm.
I just separated
correction.
it out, so that's just for the fire alarm system.
Just the fire alarm, not the bid, not the track.
Yeah, what's the company we're accepting here?
Yeah.
Let me find that here.
Yeah, it's just it's just to, I'm proposing the revised bids.
Oh, okay.
To award
Yeah.
the revised bids.
Sure. I hereby move that the board declare the previous award to Saunderson Electric and State Fire Idaho for the FMS fire alarm system as null and void, and award the bid to 3D Fire Protection of Idaho Falls as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passed. The next item of business is to consider awarding the FMS track bid as presented or award I'm going to go ahead and make the motion to award the bid and direct the administration to pursue a change order addressing the new project and scope, and that means making it a 6-lane. Is there a motion?
That's your motion.
That is my motion. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Any discussion?
I think we ought to put it off till next.
You can make you can make another motion.
Well, wait a second, I'm a
or-
little confused.
We're discussing it, so whatever you guys want to do.
I thought we decided we were going to discuss it a little bit more.
We can.
We could do that right now.
We can do it right now.
before
Yeah.
we vote.
Yeah, we can do it before we vote. Is there any other discussion that we haven't already talked about? Just the only other thing that I was on my mind is that there's the SIP awards that we have the leftover of over, 500, and you had that number, the almost 600,000?
586,000. and change.
586, and we have the money if we just, within our budget, with our SIP committee budget, and so we have the money there. The only thing that I was really thinking about with the next meeting is looking at the other things on the SIP and kind of weighing, is that more important or less important than a track? But even without that discussion, we do have the money for all of it, even without taking something else off.
I really look at it as if we are doing this, then we have to go back and redo Alameda, make it a 6-lane, redo Irving and make it a 6-lane, because what was promised at the beginning, we're changing it. And so I feel like we would have to go back and change all of that. And if we have $600,000, $700,000 laying around, we have tennis courts at Highland that we can't utilize. So why wouldn't we
Well, we're
go
not,
that
we're not,
direction? I just
that's a
feel like we
different
have other
decision.
things that would take priority over, Coach Diaz said, that they're using that track and they still have 200 kids and it's successful. I don't understand the point in us taking the ship from where it was headed and then saying, oh, we want to reverse that. And I know we weren't on the board when that decision was made, and I wouldn't have made that decision. I would have wanted it to go a different direction, but we are so far down the road on that decision that it's hard for me to pull the rug out from under Alameda and Irving on that decision. And the point that was brought up, that we really do have budget shortfalls. And I know that SIP is sitting with some money, and legally we can't cross those paths with the money. But I just want to be the most financially responsible for that money. And so it doesn't make sense to me as much as it breaks my heart. I love track. That is my sport. But if we can equalize it for those kids, that they get a track that is functional and useful, and they're using it for 200 kids already, it's been proven, I don't see the point in changing it.
So do you want to revise it to put that money toward the tennis courts?
No.
Okay,
I want
so
it
you
to
just want it to not be used?
I want it to sit and sip, and we can look at the next things that need help, instead of saying, well, we're gonna take that money from any other projects that might need it, because we decided to change the direction of the ship.
So is there a motion, I don't know, I guess.
So I'd like to have further discussion.
Yeah, I would too.
I was just gonna.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, I know we can't directly respond to comments that were made, but I think Coach Diaz's comments were very poignant to me. And to hear firsthand, even though, you know, it's funny because I read Coach Armstrong's editorial and, you know, some of the previous of how damaging this would be. And so now to hear firsthand that it's working. And I'm sure a lot of the credit goes to the coaches and the work that they're doing. And if it's something clearly they have stepped up. I mean, this doesn't change the effect on the community groups, but at the same time, if the schools can make it work. And I know this feels like I'm the pendulum that has totally swung, and it did with your testimony and your comments. And to hear that it's working and is workable it's refreshing to me. I guess the other piece, and I guess I also agree with Megan that given the decision that we made, it would be difficult to say, oh, we're going to close the school. I mean, it would be disingenuous to just, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess with that reasoning, I guess we could look at everything on the SIP with that same perspective.
Yeah.
Is it more important than closing a school? Is that parking lot more important than closing a school?
Well, I've already said the parking
Is
lot
that
is not my favorite.
I'm not talking about Highlands, because that's not on there. I'm talking about over at the Lincoln Center. And, you know, you would be talking about all of the other things, weighing it against the exact same thing.
Right. I understand what you're saying as well. I mean, we can't stop spending money either.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's now that I'm hearing that it's working, because that's what I have not heard thus far, is that it could work or was working or,
Yeah.
Well, I appreciated her comments too. I think, you know, it kind of gives us an idea of what can happen with the 3-lane track, and it opens up that field also to be able to have another sport there if they want to.
Can I ask a qualifying question? And I don't know if she's allowed to answer, but, or maybe
She's not.
Tanya, you can. Do those other schools have that 400?
All the schools will be, or has been, marked in the rubberized, so they are marked as.
Because that's what I've understood, that with Franklin, by doing this, they would lose a 400 because of the soccer needs in the center.
Now, they just have to start at a different place.
So there's a 400.
It wouldn't be a
like
true
every lane,
400.
all 8 lanes at a high school
It
track
would
meet,
be,
right?
but
They're just marked differently.
Yeah.
instead of from start
It will be
to finish line, they would start back.
It would just be
before the start,
staggered.
And then
Okay, because that's what was, you know, I don't run if I don't have to. So that was, my concern is that there seemed like there would be a less of a quality because they couldn't get a true 400, but you're saying that that would not be lost.
It's just not one lap. So you have to start at a different spot and you end at the same spot. You
So
start at
you-
a different spot.
Right.
You just don't have the curves,
You
that,
have curves,
they're not regulation curves, and it's not the same as running a
they're
400?
regulation curves,
on a
but they're
different-
outer regulation curves. Because even at a 6 or 8 lane track meet, you always will have those outer lanes running 400.
Okay,
They're just staggered.
Right.
so that's,
They don't cross lanes and go into the middle. They
Okay.
run that outer lane. Does that make
Perfect.
sense?
Yep.
That's why we.
Oh.
yeah, and so they just don't have the opportunity to run the inner lanes, but
Well,
they
they-
do have the opportunity to run the outer lanes.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Well, if
I
I
think
remember-
we understand
If I
that.
remember right, a 400, the inside lane on an 8-lane track is start to start, right?
Correct.
You start at this point and you finish at that point, and that's your
That's what
400.
people like.
And
I
so,
see, so it's more
and
of a
you take those
preference.
2 lanes out, then they start up.
Sorry, I need track 101 here.
So imagine 8 lanes, and we're gonna do the 400 run. So the inner lane is just mark to mark. So they start at the mark where they're gonna finish. but the next one is staggered and staggered. But they all only run 400. It looks less because it's bigger, it's wider lanes. Does that make sense? Longer, not
So they
wider.
don't cross the lanes to everybody
No,
easy
not on
into
a
the middle?
400, never.
Okay, okay,
No.
Yeah, they stay out there. So
Um,
they're practicing on these outside 3.
Gotcha.
So this would start their 400.
So
So
in a
what were
typical,
they saying that they wouldn't have then?
just one lap is 400. You have to know the markings. You have to
Okay.
know that that mark from there to the finish line is 400, not from start to
Finish to
finish. That's
Gotcha.
the only true. So no, there's still a marked 400.
Yeah.
And that's why there's even hurdle marks on there, so they know where to put the hurdles, so they can practice them at the right distance between each hurdle.
So Irving and Alameda
everything's-
have all the hurdle marks. And
Correct.
the-
Yeah, now, they do now,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And then I guess the only other thing is that we wouldn't be able to have any meets there. Anyway, but that's
Correct.
already been discussed, we don't need to discuss that again.
Yes.
It would take pressure off of that.
And I think
school.
somebody had asked, do you have practice for high jump and triple? And we have all of those still
Yeah,
at
that-
all the middle schools.
Yeah, I think the only
They're
other
not
issue is
hauling
just that
equipment.
we wouldn't be able to have just the regular meet.
No matter what, even when I was a middle school coach, I had to take the rake, the shot puts, the discus, even if I was going up to Franklin and competing, because I have to bring my own equipment for that.
And I guess
Does
we
that make
just have
sense?
to make sure they don't have to bring their hurdles.
Yeah, nobody
Anymore.
has. It's
Anyway.
kinda confusing.
Anyway, so do we want,
Yeah,
maybe do we
clarifying
want?
point on that.
Yes,
Do we
There
have to
has been
vote on your
discussion with
motion
the high
first?
school track coaches that when the meets are held,
we need to
We
be
need to
more
share
welcoming
supply.
because that's the athletes that are gonna be there next year. I mean, yeah, and that's the first I've heard of the unwelcoming and so definitely we'll have those discussions.
And there will be nothing done to Franklin that would keep community, I mean, it's not gonna be locked down,
Mm-hmm.
they'd still have access, walking.
Just very safe 3 lanes.
So,
Or
maybe,
6.
maybe we'll revise the motion to say that we want to table this decision because we haven't decided what we would spend that money on yet.
I would say where you have a motion and a second, call for a vote.
Oh, yeah, let's
and then we
vote on that
can
first one.
See how that turns out, and then.
Oh, because we're
go
in
from there.
discussion on a motion.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go ahead and, all in favor of that one?
So let me just clarify then.
Oh.
So the motion was to make a decision right now as to whether or not, is to go ahead and spend the money for the
The 6 lane.
6 lanes.
Right.
And we have to vote on that first.
Yeah, we do have to vote on that first. It's already been a motion and a second. So I will go ahead and vote yes for that one. All in favor? I will say aye. Any opposed?
Aye, nay.
Aye. Nay.
nay.
All right. And then, so the next motion would be,
So I would like
would
to
you like
move.
to table, a
Oh,
motion
you
to
want to do
table?
a second motion?
No,
or
no,
can
no,
we-
you can make. the
Well, I
motion.
was just gonna, I would move that the board award the track as presented.
I'll second that.
And all in favor?
Aye.
We need to have a discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry. In
I
addition.
know we already had one.
So the other motion that is also been talked about and is available is to table it and then weigh the decision.
That has not been motioned and seconded.
Right. So this motion has been motioned and seconded. The only other motion that somebody could make as an alternative.
After
motion
we
is-
vote on this motion.
Right, is to table. This is part of the discussion, by the way. So before we vote on this, as by way of discussion, we had talked about another motion to table it and then weigh it like against the other needs of the SIP. So anyway, so all in favor of this one?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye.
Nay.
All right, so that motion passed to award that bid to for Franklin Track, so that will be the 3-lane track.
I didn't hear if Ray motioned.
Oh, Ray,
On the
what did you
last-
vote on that one?
I'll vote aye to go ahead and do the 3-lane.
The 3-lane, okay. All right, so I think,
We have
The
the donation of
scoreboards.
scoreboards, Madam Chair.
what was that?
The donation of scoreboards.
Oh, yes, the last item is to consider approving the request to donate used middle school scoreboards to neighboring school district. Is there a motion?
I hereby move that the board approve the request to donate the used middle school scoreboards to neighboring school districts as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
think
Any
it's a good idea.
opposed? The motion passed. That concludes this meeting. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion?
Make the motion, we adjourn.
All right.
I second.